And often I've found that when we ask God for help, He sends the people that love us to answer those prayers.
Christ is so simple. His arithmetic is a child can comprehend it.
At the end of the day, I think people in general want to say yes. We want to help people accomplish their goals, but most people stop themselves. Like, we're our own worst enemy.
Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here at the LDS Motion Picture Studio in Provo, Utah. And joining me today is Cydni Tetro. Welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thanks. I'm super excited to be here.
You have such a long list of companies you've been involved in. Currently CEO of Brandless, but that's like, 5 or 6 or 7 companies you've been in charge of. Also the founder and president of Women Tech Council. It's a nonprofit to help girls and women get more involved in STEM and those kind of careers, which is fun. A CEO of the Year, one of your many awards, and also my favorite, the top 10 coolest entrepreneurs. I like that one. I was reading you grew up in a family, oldest of 8. What was your family dynamic like growing up?
Yep. So oldest of 8, and my dad is a doctor, so he has a medical practice. My mom worked in the home, and then she did a lot of volunteer work too in the state. She ultimately actually became PTA president of the state.
Oh, wow.
So she was heavily involved in the education ecosystem also, and then just all the dynamics that happen with that. There's 4 girls, 4 boys, but I think clearly there were lots of great things in the family. I will say one thing my parents were really great at was encouraging me very young to both pursue education and a career. And even though that wasn't like the traditional home I grew up in, my parents saw talent. And very early on, I got actually pushed towards technology, even at a time when it probably wasn't the most popular thing.
Yeah, and it's still not the most popular thing for
Still
women
not.
for whatever reason, but you're trying to change that. What was it that drew you to that, that kind of thing, the more tech kind of thing?
So there were a couple of things. I was always really good at math. So math was a really early pathway for me. But when I was a senior in high school, I actually took a job as a software tester. And that experience, testing software, just opened the entire world of innovation, what you could do and build with technology. That actually took me on an electrical engineering scholarship into BYU.
What did you do as a software tester? You sit down and try to break it? What did you
Pretty
do?
much exactly. You're basically running through scenarios and you're figuring out where the bugs are, and then you're reporting those into the engineers in order to fix it.
So early hacking, that would have been awesome.
Pretty much, yep, exactly.
I asked you about this, but you also, tech, great, but you also did a dance minor. Did you do a lot of dance and that kind of thing growing up? You probably, if you're going to do it as a minor in
Exactly. I
college.
did a ton of dance. I did the drill team. That was kind of my thing before college. And then I just knew I needed this kind of balance in thinking. Both computer science and dance have a creative aspect. They're actually both about innovation and how you build, just in entirely different ways of expression. So they're kind of polar opposites, but the continuity of creation, I think, is at the core of who they are. And that's the thing that drives me, is how do you create? And you can do it in many ways.
Yeah, I think we all think it's creative, the creative mind, it's art and those kind of things, but it takes a lot of creativity to program something as well.
Exactly, and to imagine what could be and how technology transforms the world.
And I want to ask you, what have you discovered in your experience of the reason that there are less women that are attracted towards the STEM? Is there something you've discovered as you've talked with lots of girls and women about this?
Yeah, it's a complex problem because from high school to the boardroom, we do have fewer women in STEM. There's about 23% of the workforce that are women in technology, only 5% in the executive positions. And what we find is there's just breakdowns in every stage of the talent pipeline. I do a ton of work with high school girls. I've worked with probably 40,000 so far over the last 10 years, trying to activate them into STEM careers. And the number one reason they tell us they don't pursue today is they don't have any women role models, and they don't know any women in tech. And the world is really, for so many of us, you become what you see. And the opportunities that you have before you opens your minds. And so when you don't see women who look like you or that you can relate to, you tend to not pursue those careers.
So they could be interested, they're actually interested in it, but it's just not role model, and so they feel like I don't fit.
That's right, exactly. And we all know the stats around things like girls have tended to shy away from math and other things, but so much of it is based on their exposure to opportunities. So much is. And then there are plenty of things that we have to fix in the entire pipeline to make sure that we create inclusive environments that really do embrace women. When I came out of computer science, there were 3 women in my graduating class. There would be no more today.
Wow. So are you seeing change at all? Is it improving with all the efforts? Are we getting the message across?
I think we're making change. It's slow. We are doing some work actually on the Women Tech Council side to see if we can accelerate that change. On current trajectory, it would take 60 years to equal parity. That feels like a way too long of a time. So we're working to shorten that timeline.
Yeah, 60 years does seem like an awful long time. Well, I was interested, you did your undergraduate degree, went on to get an MBA, and you were working at the same time, I think, Novell. And then about the same time you ended up getting married. You had a lot going on all at once. How did you, decide you were going to do all those things at the same time?
So one of my philosophies in life is to embrace opportunities that come your way and not be the person who closes your own doors.
Gotcha.
So there's this phase that we go through in life, which is like, okay, I would totally love to do that, but wonder if I fail, or wonder if I'm not good enough, or wonder if I don't get accepted. So when I finished my undergrad, I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I took the GRE and the GMAT and applied to a bunch of grad schools. And then I did like 100 job interviews coming out of computer science to go figure out what I wanted to do. So all these things are happening. I ended up getting a job offer on my acceptance to BYU's daytime MBA program in the same week. And I went to the company and I said, hey, if I come work for you, will you work with my daytime schedule? And they said yes. And so I looked at that as just like all of those things came together. And they came together for a very specific reason. And then I did get married 3 days before I started grad school. And so I ended up like with a schedule that looked like go to school 8 to noon, do my group study noon to 4, and then work 6 days a week for 2 years. But I also feel like when there's a finite amount of time that you're pursuing something, that you can do that and you can figure out how to balance all of those things. And do you know what? Life doesn't get easier.
Yeah.
It just gets more complex. And so your ability to kind of embrace all of those things for me has just been a hallmark of something that I've tried to continue.
Is that a lesson or something you live by? You asked. I mean, a lot of times we'd be afraid to ask, will you let me do this MBA program and work for you at the same time? And lo and behold, they said yes. Does that, common, something we should probably try more often, just to ask?
I think so. I think oftentimes we're afraid that the answer is going to be no, and so we create all these what ifs. At the end of the day, I think people generally want to say yes. We want to help people accomplish their goals. It's just a philosophy, I think, of most people, but most people stop themselves. Like we're our own worst enemy in trying to pursue opportunity because sometimes we think we're not good enough to pursue it, or what happens if they say no. So I always play the bat in a game, best alternative to my negotiated alternative. Like if I ask, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If they say no, at least I know, but I wasn't the one that stopped the opportunity. I actually think that's how doors open, is if they do have to say no, will they give you a pathway to something else?
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I've got a long list of companies that you've worked with. I've been, a leader, chief marketing product officer for NextPay, chief operating officer, Family Link, Disney Research, which probably stops a lot of people because who doesn't love Disney, right?
Yep.
How did you get involved in those companies, especially in the leadership roles? Because that's very impressive to jump in and be a part of those.
So I had really early exposure as I came out of my undergrad into product management. And that created this intersection for me of becoming a technology innovator and how you go to market. And I just ended up with these opportunities that really leaned into my talent and really with great mentors and leaders who saw that potential in me and gave me the opportunity. And then I rose to those occasions. And that just created this snowball effect for me very early in my career to have these opportunities to put my fingerprints on what we were doing and to create that opportunity. And my path doesn't look like a straight line. I came through, I've always, I would say, have a connectivity of technology and innovation, but I didn't go from a product management job to another product management job. I decided early on in my career, there were lots of things I wanted to learn. And so as I had opportunities, I was going to use those to develop other talents and other areas of expertise so that I would become much broader in my scope over the course of my career.
So another bit of advice maybe you give is that you don't have to be a total expert at everything before you jump in, as long as you have the willingness to take it on and some drive to see if it will work.
That's right. And I think it really comes from this willingness to be willing to learn. Like you don't have to know the answer to every question. The number one talent I hire for is creative problem solving. So if I throw big problems at you, which in my world happen every day and sometimes every hour, how can you create a problem solve through those and collaborate with other people to find the outcome? At the end of the day, that is the thing that matters.
How do you choose, like for example, these companies, an opportunity comes up, how do you decide, okay, this is the right one for me? What kind of, is there a formula or is it gut feeling, say, okay, it's time to move to this because it's, for whatever reason, it's a good opportunity?
So it's a blend of two things. One of the things that for me has been really important in developing my career is how that works with my priority of family. So I have 3 kids, and it has forever been important to me to figure out how I show up for them in all the ways that I need to, because that ultimately has been my first priority. So I have made my career decisions based on what I thought was the right thing for my family at that given time. When I had my very first son, the CEO that I worked for, he was phenomenal. I went to him and I said, this is at a time when this is not how we work. I was like, can I work from home Fridays? Like, I really want to do that. And he said yes. And for me, that started this path of, I'm going to lean into making decisions that I think are best for me. And sometimes I'm going to bypass jobs that I think would make me more money because I'd rather show up for my kids. And so I make lots of decisions in my life that drive that prioritization, not just career, but even how I show up in my job. So I tend to take a ton of red eyes. But I take red eyes because I'm confident that during the day, if I have to work, but at night, I can be at my kids' activities, I can help do homework, I can put them to bed. They don't care if I catch a flight at midnight. And so I have, for the last 20 years, taken red eyes, flown to the East Coast, done meetings, and flown back. And that is very unique because not all of my counterparts do that. But for me, it was a way to balance all of that. I've also looked for places where I can work from the soccer field, or I can work from the dance competition. I mean, I have chosen along the way to also do things like be the manager of my son's premier soccer team.
Oh, wow.
Or like lean into showing up to be like one of the parents for the, I've managed every sport every child mine has been in. I think I'm always tapped for the fundraising capability in addition to the organization. But that was just really important to me. I also have had the opportunity, and I look for ways where as I travel or I have to do extended things, that my family's a part of that. When I worked at Disney, so I was an Imagineering. My job was to build businesses inside of Disney, but I had an amazing opportunity for my kids to had this opportunity to go with me to Disney many times. They probably went to Florida 18 times.
Oh, wow.
Over that 5.5 years. We did one trip where I was launching a project in Hollywood Studios for Star Wars weekends. And then after that, we flew to the opening of Cars Land because I had another project launching there. They just had this amazing experience. And so I think about how do I also give my family exposure to those. The blend of those two, it guides my decisions.
Has corporate culture changed enough? Obviously, COVID changed things dramatically, but allow for things like working from home or different ways of doing business so you don't always have to be there and you can go other places. Have you seen a shift with that at all?
I mean, what it looked like 10 years ago to what it looks like today from both parental leave policies and also what we think about as flexibility. I would say for women, flexibility has always been a top thing that they've cared about, but businesses haven't always embraced that. COVID created this visibility for everyone that you could drive work styles in a way that didn't require someone in a seat 5 days a week, 8 to 5. As I build teams, I am a huge believer in hold people accountable. You don't have to care that they're in front of you all of the time. And that has been true in every company I've built, but it has also not been the norm. But it requires a different type of leadership. And I think that's one of the biggest transformations we're going to see is that leadership has to change, to embrace that people can be flexible. They have to manage their whole lives. They actually show up better for us if we empower them to both be accountable and manage the things important to them. They actually do better work for us as a company, and we all are those people. And so I think you're going to see this empathetic pathway to leadership that hasn't traditionally existed. I think the economic environment that we're currently in is putting pressure on that because we have known how traditional leadership has looked for centuries, and we're trying to change that in order to make sure that there's equity in the entire workforce.
Boy, it seems like you'd have much more employee satisfaction and loyalty if you do those things for them. People would show up and do a much better job for you if you give them that opportunity.
That is what I embrace. It is what I believe because it has been how I've built my career.
Tell me about, cool things Disney. So you were helping Imagineering. Everyone wants to know about that. What's the coolest thing you were able to do as you worked with Disney?
That was an incredible experience. So my responsibility was to figure out, based on technology innovation, what we thought we could build experiences around. I did some pretty cool things. So Star Wars is one of those. I had an opportunity to build the carbon freezing chamber on a studio, in a studio in Hollywood Studios for Star Wars weekends.
It'd be really cool if it really functioned. That'd be awesome.
Well, it did have like real fog machines and like this whole experience.
That's awesome.
It was pretty remarkable to be able to build that. One of the other things I loved at my work at Disney is just that behind the scenes. They were launching Magic Band during my time there. So the entire evolution of how that innovation went, it's kind of like your Apple Watch where you tap for all of the experiences, but the intent is, how do you take away the things that people have to think about so they rely on they think about making memories with their family and not the logistical components that come at a park experience. But it was just magical, every part of that. And it has now become that storytelling. It's not just storytelling for storytelling, but what stories mean as they relate to deeply to who people are and how that then shows up in how you bring products. It has really become fundamental to who and how I build now.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Story is huge, right? Telling your story and telling it properly. Have you built that in? Was that something you took away or something you brought to Disney? Because that's why they brought you on to begin with.
I think I understood some of it, but not to the depth that you can appreciate as you really get immersed in that culture and that organization. And then for me, it has become a much stronger thread. Sometimes people think about story as marketing slogan. That is not what it means. It really means how the thing that you're building or the experience that you're creating actually speaks to someone so much so that they would stay engaged and loyal, and it just transforms them for a moment in time into a different place. And that can be for any product. After I left Disney, I created a 3D printing company where we could make you Iron Man.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very storytelling inside of that. And eventually Hasbro built a toy line. So one of my favorite characters was like the stormtrooper. You take the helmet off, it reveals you. But everyone thinks of themselves in their favorite storylines. And so how do you give someone that experience became part of that company. And the company I did after that, we also built a whole platform for businesses around the same idea of, it's really about how you transform experience. That's the reason you deploy technology, not because of features and functions.
As you moved from like Disney to these other companies, were those opportunities you sought out, or did they present themselves and you went ahead and took advantage of those opportunities?
I would say all of the opportunities I've had have come because of this connected network and relationships that I've built over the course of my career. I wasn't pursuing any of them. Even when I went to Disney, I was coming off a company, and I often find myself in I don't know what to do with this next phase of my life. And I'm always looking for what are those doors, and these doors open, and I really believe that they're guided. Sometimes you don't know why you're exactly faced with this opportunity, but my philosophy is to jump in and take those. The Disney opportunity came because of a colleague that we had previously worked together as executives. He went in to run this group, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And he's like, Sid, come down and talk to us. So I flew down and talked to them. And my job offer was something like, hey, Sid, we've never hired someone in this role ever before. It might last for 1 month. It might last for 6 months. I have no idea. I can't even tell you. But you should totally do it. And I thought for only a half a second, when else is Disney going to call and ask me to do something like this? And if it doesn't work out, will I be okay? Yes. So am I going to take it? Yes. And that kind of philosophy has just, I think, guided me towards opportunities that will work for me and will work for the life that I'm trying to build.
Big buzzword is networking. I think sometimes they think it's, I don't know, you connect with somebody on LinkedIn or something. Very different, right? Based on what you're in, very relationship oriented.
That's right. At the end of the day, we all want to be connected to good people. And we're not trying to connect because we need something today. We're trying to connect because we want to understand how to build that ecosystem and build relationships. And if you do it right, then over the course of your career, you stay connected. The thousands of people I met in my very first job, I'm still good friends with, and I can't tell you how many times our career paths and lives have intersected and that we've stayed connected. And I think that's what we should all be pursuing, is being great to people, is being intentional in those relationships, and just being someone that people want to stay connected to, because I promise paths will cross again.
It's inevitable, right? And you hope you left the right impression.
That's right, exactly. You hope you did the right thing.
You serve on so many boards. You've also been an adjunct professor at BYU. What's been that experience like? You also teach with Goldman Sachs as well. Do you enjoy teaching?
Well, so I started teaching in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program more than 10 years ago. I loved that experience. The opportunity to meet thousands of entrepreneurs all over the country. So I taught both at Babson, and it facilitates out of Salt Lake Community College here. You get to just see the amazing talent that people have in building companies, how they've gone to market, how they've overcome struggles. And for me, I just love it. I love this opportunity to meet people and to hear those stories and to gain these insights. So to teach with all the students, and I've been teaching growth and marketing. Those have been the two. I love that experience. So at BYU, I taught entrepreneurship. 101 is the class that I taught. I started teaching it in the pandemic when it was all virtual, and I actually loved that. because I could pull in these entrepreneurs from all over the country,
Yeah.
which you can't do when you're in the physical classroom. And it was remarkable to hear their stories. One of the things I loved the most is oftentimes you only get to pull in people who are like live around a school. But when I got to pull in people all over the country, there were like all the stories that had this intersection of faith and career just started to show up in ways that no students had ever heard from these individuals before. And I found it's inspiring because everyone's paths are an intersection of those two.
Yeah, as tough as COVID was, there were some silver linings in there, some good things. Some of the things you've done, the Women Tech Council, you're founder and president. We talked about that a little bit, and also She Tech program for high school girls. Was that an initiative you brought on yourselves? Like, hey, we need to do something about this?
Yes. But I always apply my technology background to like test and optimize any idea I have. I'm like, I have this idea. Maybe it's a good idea. I don't know. So we always, in anything I do, I'm testing, I'm figuring out if it meets the need, and I build that. Started the Women Tech Council. We completely focused on the economic impact of women in tech and to increase the number. And then over the course of time, we've tried to focus on programs we think make the most impact. And we saw this need with high school girls. They don't know women in career.
Yeah.
And when they meet them, it changes their lives. And it truly does. Today, all these girls are pathwaying into STEM, and they attribute it to the She Tech program, both because they met women, they saw pathways, they feel supported. So we have about 3,000 to 4,000 girls annually that participate in that program. It runs through the entire school year. We have about 100 young women who serve on the student board for that organization. They've activated clubs inside of their high schools. They participate in monthly activities. There's an internship that we just finished that runs every year. And for them, it changes who they are. And now we're seeing those young women start to graduate from college and pathway into first jobs.
Kind of fills that role you talk about. They see people like themselves doing those things. Tell me about Brandless. It is better for you products. So what does that mean?
So at Brandless, we have a consumer products platform. It's all better for you products, where we're really thinking about how do we help people live healthier and the planet live healthier. And we've really built it through kind of two ways. This platform where we drive really powerful acceleration in multiple channels, direct to consumer, retail, Amazon. But we've also acquired brands into our platform because we really believe today people are the platform and they're looking for this curated opportunity of things that are better for you. So we were talking about this a little bit, 118 million.
Yeah.
And we've really used that to fuel growth through acquiring mission-driven, like-minded brands, bringing those products in, and then driving growth. And so it's really focused in things that are important to me, being mission-centric, using a platform to drive that acceleration and creating products and experience that customers love.
You know, as you were talking about taking the red end and other things, I'm trying to envision a typical day at work for you. What's it like for you being, you know, a CEO of a company and also an entrepreneur and all these other things? Imagine you getting up at 5 a.m., run the treadmill. What's a day like for you?
Yep, it's always early morning, partially also because my daughter goes to drill team at 6 a.m. So she's like,
Somebody's got to get her there.
That's right, exactly. So we start that. But it does start early. I usually get to the office about 8. And I find that my day-to-day life is rapid context switching every 30 minutes. So this ability to like switch context, be fully engaged in whatever that topic is, and dive deep is really where I sit now. Because each one of those, there's something that you're always trying to problem solve. There's 2 things I know about every one of my days. Whatever I thought it was going to be at the beginning is never what it is by the end. So my schedule is very dynamic. It's completely rearranged almost every day. I have tried for a long time in my career to be super focused in the time that I'm at work. Today I take no lunches because I don't have time to go to lunch. I'd rather just like work all the way through. But I try to get home around like 5:30 for my family so that I'm with my kids in those evening hours, because they don't care if I pick back up and work at 10 or 11 for a couple hours. But if I stay at work, then I miss the time with them. So I show up at every activity that my kids have. I manage my calendar and schedule around that. But I would say my days are just heavily context switching across every aspect of my life.
Well, amazing. You've done so many amazing things. Is there anything, any of the things that you've done that really is a standout, like the pinnacle? There's so many things that you've done, board members on different things. What is it that you enjoy the most, I guess?
You know, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of what I've built is that I have this ability to not just build companies, but attract talent and give them opportunities that they might not have had if I hadn't been sitting in that seat. So this opportunity that you have when you run companies to be responsible to help other people, to open doors for them, is really important to me, because I think that's one of the things that we're really asked to do, is how do you use the talents and the resources that you've been given to help those people around you. And for me, especially being a woman in career and being, so much in the minority in that position, I recognize that if I open doors for people faster than maybe others would, or faster than other people might have thought was correct, I give them opportunities, and that is how I think we change what happens inside of companies. And so I really lean into the people side. And I think if I've left nothing else other than a legacy of how did I create more opportunity for other people around me? Did I open more doors? Did I give more seats at the table? Did I create an environment where this became a catalyst for what they do next? For me, that becomes what I've tried to do in building companies. And even in the Women Tech Council, like, I view our role there as accelerating visibility and opportunity for women in tech. Because not only does it impact their lives, it impacts families, it impacts community, it impacts the world. We get better problem solving because of that. And I think that's just a critical aspect to I think it's what we're called to do, is to lift and help those people around us.
Cydni Tetro, it's been a pleasure to talk with you, currently the CEO of Brandless. So many other things you've been involved in. Thanks for taking a few minutes to come and talk with us today.
Thanks for having me.